What's going on YouTube? So there are a few cars that are ever revealed that can completely transform a brand's entire image. But that's exactly what happened when Kia released the Telluride back in 2020.
It shocked the world with its design and luxury. And that's exactly what Kia is hoping to do with this all-new 2027 second generation Telluride.
We actually recently purchased this Telluride, and we want to know after a week, does it have what it takes to take down these segment giants like the Grand Highlander? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Like always, we need to start off this review with a spec dump about what is under the hood. So the next generation of Telluride will be available in both a gas and hybrid powertrain. We have the gas option, which is a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine making 274 horsepower. It's paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and the combined fuel economy with all-wheel drive is 20 mpg.
Now, the base price of the Telluride this year is $39,000, and if you're looking to buy one or any new vehicle, we would encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes to get the best price. Now, of course, we can't wait to take it out on the road so you can see what this new powertrain is all about. While we're on that spin, we'll also get things like our sound level reading. But first, we need to go ahead and close up the hood and take a look at this all-new exterior as well as the all-new interior.
Now, before we get into the exterior, I do want to just take a second to address something that is a common point of confusion based on the previous videos we've uploaded about this. 2027 Telluride is indeed a 2027 model year. Yes, it is very early for it to be a 2027 model year, but just to address that confusion, it does actually exist. They went straight from 25 to 27. Now, as far as the exterior design is concerned, boy, there's a lot to talk about with this next generation Telluride. What they did was basically take a lot of the things that worked on the first generation and just modernize it and make it a little bit more aggressive overall. There's a lot of different versions you can get of this as well. So Kia's kind of structured it so you have the core group. That's going to have a more conventional grille design. You're also going to have more body color through the center section. Or you can choose on many of the trim levels to add the X-Line. That's what we have today, the EX X-Line. And that gives us a more aggressive grille. It's going to look a little bit tougher, more off-road focused, and as you can see, it's all blacked out through here and really very large. You also have blacked out Kia logos all around the vehicle. Now, moving on to our headlights, we have our full LED projector headlights. These, by the way, are very good headlights, and we will be covering them at night as well in an upcoming night review. As you can see, we also have our big old daytime running light and turn signal indicators finished in that signature amber color, and these have animations on the SX Prestige model. Down here at the bottom, upper end examples get LED fog lights as well as all the X-Lines and X-Pros. And speaking of X-Pro, that's where you get this design, but you also get the extra capability as well. So that'll take your ground clearance up to 9.4 inches. And as we look at the back, it continues with that kind of modernized, tough, and boxy look. And I think more than a little bit of Range Rover inspiration.
Yeah, I would say so. And I have to say, this is probably my favorite angle of the Telluride is here in the back. Now, let's break down some of the individual design touches. So we have a spoiler up here at the top. One of the things that I really like is that they've integrated the wiper underneath of that. As far as all of our branding, that's going to be blacked out here on the X-Line variant. And let's talk about our taillights, because Kia has included some really premium taillights. As you can see, we have a full LED brake light and turn signal indicator. The brake light actually goes all the way across the top as well. That's a nice premium touch. And then you have an LED reverse light integrated down in the center section. Now, speaking of, down here in the lower area, we have a little bit of gloss black, a little bit of rugged matte black plastic. And as far as the tow capacity, it comes in at 5,000 pounds for the gas models or 4,500 pounds for the hybrid.
Next up, let's move on to the wheels. From the base LX to the top-end SX Prestige, you have 18 to 20-inch alloys available in a wide variety of designs. However, if you add the X-Line package, you can actually upgrade them to 21-inch alloys. And that's what we have on our tester, the 21-inch gloss black alloys. So this is a pretty big size for the segment. And as you can see, it's got a bit of a geometric design. As far as the entire exterior, people we've shown this to so far have generally really liked it. I will say, though, the wheels are the one point of kind of controversy, that's for sure. So definitely check around when you're shopping for one of these, which type of wheel design you want based on what trim you select. Now, another thing that's controversial are these wheel arches. We have this kind of notch-looking design, and if you get one that's not an X-Line, it has a body color insert that kind of wraps around through there. Moving up here to our mirrors, heating and blind spot monitoring are both standard on all trims. The EX is going to add power folding abilities, and if you want auto dimming, you can get that, but you need to get at least the SX trim.
Now, as far as vehicle length, this Telluride's up about 2.3 inches as compared to the previous generation. That means it's 199.2 inches in vehicle length. And really more important than that is that it's an inch taller than the previous generation. So it does feel very substantial here in person. All of our window surrounds are going to be blacked out. We also have the raised roof rails because we have the X-Line model. And we have the very controversial element of the pop-out door handles. Drew will talk about that a little bit more in a second. And I want to point out that there are plenty of colors that you can get this model in. What you see here is wolf gray. Now, when it comes to your safety systems, it's a family SUV. You will get all 4 active safety features as standard equipment, and that even includes things like Highway Drive Assist 1.5. SX and above will add Highway Drive Assist 2.0, which will allow for some lane changing. But there's a ton to talk about on the inside, so let's dive into that. But first, if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We started young, and since then we have reviewed over 2,000 vehicles at every price point.
No matter what you're looking for, from humble to high-end, we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family.
Let's learn a lot and have some fun with all the latest cars. Now, as cool as the exterior is, of course, the inside is the main feature, so let's get to that. Here's our key fob. First of all, standard Kia key fob. You have smart entry and remote start on all trims. Now, as I approach the vehicle, you'll see the mirrors will fold out and the door handles will pop out. As far as the operation of this, so far we have really had great success with this. It has always popped out when we approach the door handle. It even popped out through a thin sheet of ice earlier this week. So far so good. We'll see if that lasts in our long-term ownership impressions though. Now, as far as the inside is concerned, of course, we've got a all-new design with all the latest and greatest Kia stuff. And let's start by talking about the seats. Now, only the base model will come with a cloth seat. Once you move up the trim structure, you get the Syntex leatherette. That's what we have on our EX. And as you can see, nice look to this with a stitching detail. It's nice and soft as well, and it has X-Line branding up there. Now, one thing though that I think is very important to point out about this next generation Telluride is that you cannot get a real leather seat on any trim level for 2027 model years. So that means even that top end fully loaded SX Prestige, that will still come with the Syntex seat. It'll just have some extra suede inserts. Now, there's also going to be a ton of really vibrant interior colors that you can get, especially as you move up the interior structure. We'll insert a few of the more interesting ones, but for instance, a partially purple interior is offered, so that's certainly very, very neat. Now, as far as the seats, we have a very dramatic number of seat adjustments. This is just kind of the standard one here with 4-way lumbar support, but there's 5 different versions you can get, from manual all the way up to the full relaxation seat as an option on your hybrid models, and that will come with the Ergo Motion massage. Let's go ahead and climb inside. All right, so now I've closed up the door. Let's look around at the rest of the cabin materials. Of course, Telluride has always been known for having a very premium interior for the segment. That does continue for the new generation, even on more of a middle line like we have today with our EX. So over here on the door trim, we have a full leatherette covering that actually will continue all the way up through here and even along the top with a stitching detail. As we move to the upper dashboard, this is all finished in a full leatherette covering with more stitching details. You'll see through the center section, we have a trim that's kind of looks like almost a stone finish. I think it looks quite premium. It feels nice as well. And of course, on your upper end examples, you can get some different types of trim as well. Down here on the center section, we have more of that trim. So no real piano black, which is nice. And of course, you got those signature Telluride handlebars and more leatherette covering the console here. Everything feels extremely solid and well put together. Now we'll go ahead and fire it up with our push button start, which is located here on the shifter. All right, so let's jump right into the details. We'll start over here with our gauge cluster. So you're going to have a 12.3 inch arrangement across the lineup. However, on the lower trims, only the center section is reconfigurable. That's what we have. Unless you get up to the SX, that will give you the full reconfigurability, also give you the blind spot camera system. Now, another thing that you can get is, of course, a head-up display. That's on the SX Prestige. Now, as we pull back to the steering wheel, we've got a very nice look to this. It's kind of a squared off design. We do have the off-center logo, so that might bother some people, but overall it feels really nice in the hand. This is manual tilt and telescoping, but you can get power adjusting on the Telluride, unlike the Palisade. You just have to get the SX Prestige model. Also, the SX Prestige will give you steering wheel heating, or you can get that by adding the X-Line to any of the models. You can see that over here. Now, we're on this panel, we might as well go ahead and mention the seats as well. Heated seats are included on all but the base LX trim, and then on the mid-level EX trim, that's actually where you get ventilated seats. So the vast majority of people are probably going to end up buying one with heated and ventilated seats. I like that touch. All right, let's move on to interior storage, because of course that's very important for a family 3-row. Opening up our center console here, you can see some donuts inside. That's because we like to do the signature donut test. And this Telluride can hold 19 donuts. So this is a very deep center console. It doesn't quite fit the maximum 2 dozen like the Grand Highlander, but that's still a very good result. Up in front of that, we've got some more storage right there and our 2 cup holders. We have 2 wireless phone charging pads, and that's because this is standard on every single Telluride. Even the base model will get 2 wireless phone charging pads. And then finally, we also have a very large center pass-through. So this certainly has plenty of places to stick things. Now that's made possible by our new electronic shifter up here on the steering column. You're just going to twist that up for drive. We have paddle shifters on the steering wheel. And then when we go into reverse, this will reveal a standard backup camera. As you can see, we have active trajectory. The resolution is improved over the previous generation, and also all models get front and rear parking sensors. If you want a 360 camera though, you will need to choose at least the SX trim level. And I do wish that at this price point that Kia would give the 360 camera maybe at the EX trim level, just to have more people be able to get access to that feature, because I know a lot of people are looking for that in something so big. Now moving into the center section, you'll see a few controls. These are for your 3-zone automatic climate control system. So you can do the basic stuff like adjust your temperature up and down, as well as your fan speed. But the rest of the functions are going to be up here in this 5-inch display, which is in between the other 2 displays. So you can see when you make adjustments, that will show up right there. And then you can also click here, and this will expand your menu for all the additional functions that you can change. Now, as far as how this functions, doesn't really bother us in any way, since we have that physical control down there, except that when I want to see my 72 degrees, I do find that the steering wheel actually blocks that out for the driver's view. Now, you also have some physical controls through there for your audio functions, and speaking of, here is our volume knob. So we have a standard 8-speaker sound system on board, or an available 14-speaker Meridian sound system on the SX and above. We have the 8-speaker today. Let's see how good it is. Overall, we're actually pretty impressed by this audio system. It definitely, fills up the cabin plenty and has a decent amount of bass, so it doesn't seem like a basic sound system. But I'm sure, of course, if you really want to get into the audio stuff, the Meridian is going to be able to deliver you a more powerful performance. All right, so taking a look now at our main infotainment system, this is also 12.3 inches, and this gets a huge upgrade over the previous generation. So of course, a lot of people were criticizing that you did not have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Well, of course, now that has been rectified, and you can see that running right now. I'll also cycle in to Kia's infotainment system itself and give you a look at what that is. So we have built-in navigation on most models, and you can see your apps are just nicely arranged out through there. You can even do some advanced things like go on YouTube and check the weather. As you scroll over, you can see some additional functions such as My Queue Garage ability. And overall, the performance of this system is very snappy. It pairs to our phones super quickly. Now, taking a look up here at our mirrors, the EX trim is where you get the auto-dimming mirror. The SX gives you HomeLink universal remotes, and the SX Prestige gives you the digital camera rearview mirror system. SXP will also give you a suede headliner. And then I'll open up our standard size sunroof. This is included on all but the very base model, and if you want a dual panel sunroof, you can get that on the SX and above.
All right, so let's talk about the rear seats and how practical the new Telluride is. So first and foremost, let's hit space figures. So what we're looking at is 43 inches of legroom, 40.4 inches of headroom. Guys, those are absolutely phenomenal numbers. As a matter of fact, that's class-leading numbers. The Hyundai Palisade and this are really the largest options in the segment, and I really think that this Telluride is perhaps even more spacious than the Palisade. Now let's go ahead and get our knee room measure. This seat is adjusted to Drew, who's 5'8". I'm 5'9", and look at that. I have a full foot of knee space. That is absolutely incredible. Also, my feet can easily slide up underneath of the seats. Speaking of sliding, these seats slide forward and back a very good distance, so that's convenient for families. And you also do have the ability to recline this seat a really good distance as well to make for some pretty epic naps. Now, you might be curious as to what trim levels get captain's chairs. That's actually going to be on the vast majority of Telluride models. If you want bench seating, you can get the LX or EX trim levels, and that will expand your seating capacity up from 7-passenger, as tested today, to 8-passenger seating. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the center area. We have 2 cup holders right here, a nice storage bin for a couple loose objects, 2 USB ports, and then let's take a look at our main controls. Those are going to be located up here in the ceiling. Here's our climate panel. You can adjust your own temperature. Additionally, if you were to choose a SXP model, that will give you the heated and ventilated back seat. So that's definitely a pretty bougie touch to see in this vehicle segment. So you do have to get the fully loaded one, but it is offered. And then we have our vents coming out of the ceiling. If you look over at the door trim, you also see something I'm pretty happy about. Rear window sunshades are standard on EX grades and above. The rest of the door is made of very nice materials, lots of the leatherette padding, and then we also have quite a bit of door storage down in the very bottom. All right, so let's check out the third row. In order to get back here, they made it really easy. You just press that button and the seat is actually going to tilt out of the way. That's good. If you have a car seat installed, you don't have to remove it, and that's something actually the previous generation did not have. And let's go ahead and get back here into the third row. Sitting in the third row of this all-new generation, we have a pretty nice one. It's 32 inches of legroom, about 37 inches of headroom. So overall, these are good numbers for the segment. It's not exactly class-leading. There are a few rivals that have better third rows. Things like the Toyota Grand Highlander, the Chevy Traverse will be a little bit better than this Telluride, but overall, it is a nice improvement. Notably, I think the headroom is very good now that this model is about an inch taller. Now, with this seat slid all the way back, I don't have any additional knee space, but my feet can slide up underneath of the seats, and as far as thigh support, it is going to be pretty decent back here. I would say the Palisade maybe has a little bit more room because it has a power sliding third row. That's not something you can get on the Telluride, but as far as features you can get a heated third row on this model. You can also get power adjusting second row seats, but it's very limited availability, only optional on the SX Prestige Hybrid. Now over on the sides, we have 2 cup holders, we have a USB port, and then you have vents that come out of the ceiling. So overall, the third row is solid, but not necessarily a class-leading third row, so I'm going to say that this is fit for adults. Let's go ahead and check out the cargo area. A hands-free power tailgate is included on all but the base model, and let's talk about cargo capacity because I'm sure you're curious about that. What you can expect is about 22 cubic feet of space behind the third row of seats. I can easily fold the third row by just grabbing the strap and pushing them down. No power folding third row is available on the Telluride. And then that reveals about 49 cubic feet of space. And if I fold the second row down, which I can also do easily from the cargo area, that will give me 89 cubic feet of space. That is a very good number for the segment. Not necessarily class leading, but it is very good. The Grand Highlander and Traverse have slightly more cargo capacity, but it is very solid. And speaking of all of its competition, we would encourage you to go to carconfections.com/vehicle rankings. We've looked at all the 3-row midsize SUVs on the market and ranked them in individual categories, things like cargo capacity, third row, interior luxury features, technology, powertrain experience, and value. And you can sort and see the best options in each of those categories so you can make an informed buying decision. There are a ton of options in this segment, so you definitely want to utilize that tool. Now, I need to go ahead and push those seats down just a little bit. And now, as you can see, they are completely flat with the floor. So let's get our cargo length, width, and height figures. So its overall cargo length behind Drew's seating position is 90 inches. That is very solid. From behind the second row of seats, width that slid all the way back, 48 inches. From behind the third row, 21 inches. As far as the opening, that's very solid, 45 inches. And then up here, as far as height, that's going to be also pretty solid at 30 inches. Now let's get our load-in height as well. The load-in height is going to be pretty tall, 33 inches, so just be aware you kind of have to lift up to load things in. And then if I lift this up, I kind of want to point out this Easter egg. You actually have a full kind of ruler so you can measure things. There's also cup holders for those of you that are going to be tailgating. And also, if you're going to be tailgating, you might like this light up here at the top that you get on the X-Line models. You can actually change the color of it as well as the brightness. So even if it's dark outside, you'll be able to do that. You have additional underfloor storage underneath, and you additionally have a spare tire, which is honestly becoming quite rare for the segment. Well, guys, here we are behind the wheel of our very own 2027 Kia Telluride. In this test ride, we're going to be discussing quite a lot, as you can see as on the screen right now. We'll also be getting things like our sound level reading and discussing our real-world fuel economy over the full tank of gas that we've used. But first, we need to start with a hard acceleration.
Alrighty, that is 60 miles per hour. So of course, let's jump right into, one of the more controversial things about this all-new 2027 Kia Telluride. You heard us talk about it a bit at the spec dump, but the previous generation had a V6, and now for this new generation, they have switched to a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine as the standard engine. So this is a 2.5 liter turbo 4. It's making 274 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. So for those of you familiar with the previous generation, or if you own one, it actually has 13 less horsepower than the V6. But we have about 50 pound-feet more torque. So it's definitely an engine that has a different characteristic than that previous V6.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are pros and cons to, the Turbo 4 switch. Like Drew said, the torque, I think, really is a big pro. We noticed that as soon as we bought this vehicle, it really pushes you back in your seat as soon as you step on the accelerator to kind of make it feel more powerful than it is. Now, as far as overall 0 to 60 times, they're going to be roughly similar. This Turbo 4 is going to be a little bit faster than the previous Telluride model as well. So it is a good switch. However, for those of you that really love that V6 refinement, I will say you kind of miss out on that experience here. The Hyundai Palisade kept a V6 in its all-new generation. That's not going to be the case here for the Telluride, so I will say that some of the noise entering into the cabin is definitely not as refined.
So there's another taste of that. I will say it's not overly loud at all, and certainly compared to some of the other turbo 4-cylinders in the rivals, I think this is one of the quieter ones, and it doesn't have a lot of harshness entering into the cabin either. But like Mason was saying, a smoothness of a V6 is really hard to replicate, of course, with a turbo 4-cylinder. So I think you'll know which camp you're in, but this does get off the line really nicely with that grunty torque. Now let's talk about the other aspect of the powertrain, the transmission, of course. This has got an 8-speed automatic transmission. We have to say, over this past week of owning this vehicle, really a smooth transmission. It does an excellent job of just blending into the background. You never really feel like you're waiting on it to shift or anything like that. And of course, when you accelerate hard, it does a good job as well.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they didn't go for the dual clutch 8-speed. I think this one is very smooth and refined. Now, I do also want to point out there is another powertrain option. You can get the Telluride Hybrid. It is going to be later availability, so I think production is beginning sometime around March or April for that model, and that's going to have basically the same 2.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder, electric components. Altogether, it's going to give you 329 horsepower, 339 pound-feet of torque, so it is going to be more performance-oriented than this and give you better fuel economy as well. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, and we have experienced that all-new hybrid powertrain in the sibling, the Hyundai Palisade, if you're curious as to what that might be like. But we're cruising down our designated strip of road to talk about ride quality, and over the first week of owning this car, we've driven it on various road surfaces. As a matter of fact, we bought it out of state and we had to drive it back on the interstate, so we've been on all types of roads, and overall, the ride quality of this model is very good. Now, I will say very good because it's not exactly as good as some of the competition. Some of the other rivals, such as the Honda Pilot, the Hyundai Palisade, I do feel like give you better ride quality overall than this model, but this is far from uncomfortable, that's for sure. It's definitely very good ride quality. The seats are comfy. I think most families are going to be very pleasantly surprised with the ride. Now, I will just go ahead and point out, if you weren't paying attention on the outside, we have the largest wheel option in the Telluride lineup, the 21-inch wheels. So I would imagine that the ride quality get even better if you chose a smaller wheel size or maybe a different trim level like the X Pro. All right, and we are speeding up to 55 miles per hour for a moment I'm sure a lot of you guys are waiting on. What's the sound level reading in the Telluride? Our rear climate is powered off, and we have it on fan speed 1. $57.5 seems to be the number that we have settled in at. We don't have to sit here and guess how it compares to all of its competition. We can find that at carconfections.com/sound level readings. And compared to its competitors, I will say that is definitely going to be a little bit on the louder side. It's certainly not super loud for the segment, but it is not as quiet as something like a Hyundai Palisade, a Toyota Grand Highlander. We also tested out the previous generation Telluride, and that tested a little bit quieter, but keep in mind that we are in a lower trim level. We're in the EX X-Line model. Kia has said that certain trim levels will add different type of glass elements to make the cabin quieter, so we look forward to testing out a fully loaded example in the future to see just how quiet that one is.
Now we've made it to a bit of a back road here, and we can talk a little bit about dynamics. So as I go around this corner, and I've now put it in sport mode, I think this demonstrates one of the things that was kind of unexpected for us about this new Telluride, and that is that it has a little bit of athleticism, dare I say. So obviously this is a big family 3-row, right? So it's not a sports car or anything like that, but also when you go around corners pretty quickly, it has really good body control. You don't have a lot of body roll. The steering also has a little bit of firmness, and it's very responsive as soon as you go off center, especially when you go into the sport mode. Overall, I would say this is really quite good for the segment. Of course, a lot in this segment can be pretty sloppy and throw your passengers all over the vehicle. So the fact that this has, this type of body control and still a good ride quality, I think is pretty impressive.
Now, as far as how power is routed to the ground, front-wheel drive is standard on the vast majority of trim levels. If you choose a SX Prestige or any of the X trims, that will give you standard all-wheel drive. And let's talk about fuel economy. So you might think that the Turbo 4 is really going to make a huge difference when it comes to fuel economy, and unfortunately, it really hasn't made a huge difference in terms of the overall figure. So with all-wheel drive, we're sitting at 18, 24, 20. Now, that number is actually identical to what you would get in a Palisade Palisade V6 all-wheel drive, so really not a huge benefit in the fuel economy department. If you choose front-wheel drive, it comes in at 22 mpg, and then the X Pro is rated at 19 miles per gallon. Now, you're probably wondering, what is our real-world experienced fuel economy, because we haven't lived with this model for the past week, and we've burned through the entire tank of gas. We're about out of gas now. So across 354 miles of driving, we're sitting at 18.4. Now, that was mixed driving in both the city and the highway. We also did film a couple videos with this Telluride over that tank of gas as well, so that would contribute to maybe a little bit of a lower figure. So I would say overall that is tracking pretty much on par with what the EPA is saying of 20 mpg combined. But of course, we will have more detailed fuel economy testing coming soon. We own this vehicle. There definitely is a highway fuel economy test already scheduled. All right, so what's our slam dunk and airball, our favorite and least favorite element? I'll just go ahead and kick us off with the slam dunk and say that we really have enjoyed living with this product for the past week, and we're very impressed with what Kia has done. You know, it's hard to follow up on such a great first generation and actually make the second generation better, and I do really feel like they have done that. You know, there's not really anything that is different. The formula is basically the same, except they've fully modernized it, and I really am liking it so far.
Yeah, for sure. Now, on the airball, we had to think a little bit about this because it's not the type of vehicle that presents a lot of obvious airballs, that's for sure, in our first week of owning it. But one thing that we did observe is just the fact that compared to the Palisade, which is, of course, is a related product, for the price point that we have today, about $50,000, you will get more features from the Palisade. So I think you're paying a little bit more with the Telluride for the design of it and getting less features, if that matters to you.
So as far as pricing, we start at $39,190. That does mean it's a little bit more expensive than the previous generation model, that's for sure. Now, there are a ton of trim levels. You can see the full breakdown on the screen right now. Of course, it increases in price all the way up to the SX Prestige X Pro, which is $56,000. Now, as far as this particular model, we went for a modestly equipped model. So this is an EX X-Line, so kind of a middle trim level with all-wheel drive. That means we start at $47,290. After the optional paint, carpeted floor mats, and destination of $1,545, we are sitting at $49,580. As far as where it's manufactured, it is manufactured in West Point, Georgia, so just a couple states over from here. And if you're looking to buy a Kia Telluride or any new vehicle, we would encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. The reason you should do that is because we have a tool on our website that'll connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool to use while dealership negotiating. If you'd like to take advantage of that, as well as things like our monthly payment tool, you can find a link to that down below in our video description, as well as a pinned comment at the top of this video. But buying a vehicle is about more than just that original MSRP, so let's talk about resale, reliability, and the warranty. First up, let's talk about resale value. Kia as a brand is rated at 49.02% of expected retained value after 5 years and 60,000 miles, and after 10 years and 120,000 miles, 21.13%. Now, it's worth noting that is right at industry average for all vehicle brands. However, it would be less than some of its main competition, such as Honda, Toyota, and Mazda.
Now, we also talk about reliability. And when we look at the latest data for our combined reliability index, Kia as a brand is rated above the overall industry average.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about our resale values, our reliability data, or our methodology, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. And also important in that decision is your warranty. You have a 5-year, 60,000 mile basic warranty, a 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, which is very good for this segment. Just be aware you do not get any complimentary maintenance. Guys, that wraps up our in-depth week-long review of this all-new 2027 Kia Telluride. Now, of course, you heard us at the introduction. We actually purchased this model, and that's to make a ton of content on this Telluride. So if you're at all interested in this model, we would definitely encourage you to hit that subscribe button down below. There will be a ton more videos on our overall long-term ownership experience, and you won't want to miss out. If you're already part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support. You make this all possible, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.